Hello everyone, my name is Chris Schaefer. I'm the president of the Heritage Lake POA Board of Directors and want to share with you information about the covenant petition and other documents you may have received. This video is fourth in the series of 8 intended to help all property owners understand the background, reasons for, and to provide answers to questions about this petition. Hopefully you've already seen Introduction to Heritage Lake Covenant videos, What the Heck Are Bylaws and Covenants and Why Should I Care? And what's the difference between rule, bylaw, and covenant changes? This video will help focus specifically on what we're trying to change and why. The short answer to what we're trying to change and why is this. We are trying to change the way votes are managed for covenant changes to allow us to support changes that the majority of voting members want. We have been and continue to be controlled by members who do not vote their lots, resulting in blocking the changes that the community and board feel are in our best interests. The non-voting majority is controlled by our ability to support the voting majority. I do not believe our covenants are broken, and many of the restrictions in the covenants remain reasonable. I do believe, however, that the restrictions which govern our ability to change the covenants themselves are unreasonable. So much so that in over 40 years they've not been changed a single time. Right now, the entire community, including members who may live out of state and don't respond to voting opportunities, and even members who have not paid their dues, has the opportunity to vote in every covenant issue before us. Yet we only typically receive about 50% of the votes needed to pass or fail a ballot. Those who actually vote have no voice. I would like to remind you that the voting members of the community are the only ones with the power to change the covenants. That will not change if this petition passes. Currently, the non-voting members of the community are the ones with the power to stop all change. In the future, if this passes, if people abstain from voting, they will not influence the outcome as long as we receive 750 ballots back from the membership. If 500 of those are yes, the covenant will change. We need to let the votes dictate our direction, not the non-votes. Now for the detail behind the answer. In video number 2, What the Heck Are Bylaws and Covenants and Why Should I Care?, I spoke about the process by which our governing documents may be changed. In a nutshell, bylaws are changed after the board attorney provides a draft of the requested changes and the board votes whether or not to adopt the changes. Once that's done, the newly adopted version of the bylaws is filed with the Putnam County Recorder and it becomes legally binding. The community may offer input at the board review and vote, but the community does not actually vote on the change. I also described the covenant change process. When a covenant change is proposed, our attorney drafts language consistent with the proposal. Once that language has been reviewed, a ballot or petition is drafted and mailed to every lot owner in our community, along with a printed copy of the new covenants. This effort will also include enclosing a frequently asked questions document to help property owners better understand the issues. Ballots include a deadline date for the POA to receive votes for or against the petition. The ballot also identifies the total number of yes votes required for the petition to pass, which is around 1,991. This year's petition will also include a request for your current email address to update our records. Providing that email address is not required to make your vote valid. Our covenants, like our bylaws, were written in 1970-something. Over the years, our bylaws have been changed many times. During that 40-plus years since they were written, our covenants have been updated a total of 0 times. That's right, not a single change has been made to our covenants since the time they were written over 4 decades ago. Consider this thought. Where were you 40 years ago? What has changed in your life over the past 4 decades? You've had to adapt to the uses of new technologies, tools, information, and standards over the 40 years, right? County, state, and national laws have changed in that time to meet the galloping pace of change. Our covenants have not changed, not at all. Your Board of Directors regularly receives requests from the community to permit or introduce things that our community feels are needed. When a request for change is received, the first thing the Board does is determine whether the covenants, bylaws, or any rule or policies prohibit the request. If the request is prohibited, we must change our governing documents before the requested change is permitted. The Board has the authority to approve changes to rules, bylaws, and policies, but only if the requested change does not conflict with the covenants. If the covenants prohibit the change, it's a deal breaker, period. Why is it a deal breaker? Because in the over 40 years since they were authored, we've not a single time been able to change them. And why haven't we been able to change them? It's simply because, try as we may, and regardless the number of times we've sent and resent ballots out for vote, we've not been able to get enough return ballots to pass a single issue. In fact, we typically only receive about 50% of the ballots we send to the community. If you consider that there are 2,986 lots at Heritage Lake, if 50% of the lots vote, that brings us to about 1,493 votes. Even if the vote was a unanimous 1,493 to 0 in favor of the covenant change, we would still remain nearly 500 votes short of our ability to approve that change. This is so because 1,991 votes in favor of any covenant change, or 66 2/3 the majority of all lots, are required for a covenant change vote to pass. The implications of this to our community and maybe our safety could be profound in the event of an environmental emergency or any other critical and time-sensitive challenge which might face our association if our covenants restrict our acting in prompt, efficient, and proper ways to resolve the challenge. Under our current covenants, we would be powerless to react. Contrary to some comments and conspiracy theories, the POA Board has no emergency powers to set aside the covenants. Surely, appealing to the courts in an emergency is an option, but appeals take time which we may not have. I do not believe our covenants are broken, and many of the restrictions in the covenants remain reasonable. I do believe the restrictions which govern our ability to change the covenants themselves are unreasonable. I agree that the entire community should be able to vote on every covenant issue before us, but as we stand now, those who actually vote have no voice. This is so because there are more folks who do not vote. Because of the 66 2/3 majority of total lots requirement, this no-vote fraction of lot owners have both the loudest and the final voice. Think about that. Our state and national elections are based on ballots cast, not on ballots that were never cast. This is where we are. Those not voting, not living here, some of whom who have never seen Heritage Lake, and many who live in other states control our destiny. We ourselves are powerless. In past covenant change initiatives, the Board has heard that there are fears that changing the covenants would somehow give the Board more power to manipulate and change the covenants in the future. The fact of the matter is that the Board cannot possibly gain those extra powers because the proposed change to the covenants continues to give all powers to voters to pass any change, including any covenant changes which could propose the Board be given more power. The Board can't just take power or change the covenants to grant themselves more power. Voters alone pass covenant changes, and unless the voters vote to change that in the future, that will continue to be the way we govern ourselves going forward. The Board currently has zero power in covenant changes and will not gain any additional powers should this ballot pass, period. In the second video, What the Heck Are Covenants and Bylaws and Why Should I Care?, I talked about recommendations in the strategic plan regarding its observation that our governing process and rules are not able to support our growing community and the issues that come with that growth. The observations of the strategic plan remain as a primary driver in our need to continue this covenant change initiative. The 2017-18 effort included a series of 3 different mailings to encourage all lot owners to vote. Regardless of the effort, still fewer than 50% of the ballots were returned. Nearly 70% of those returned ballots were yes votes to change the covenants. But we couldn't make the changes because we didn't receive the required 2/3 of all lot owner ballots. Because it was clear to the board that among those who did vote, those in our community affected by the proposed changes, the overwhelming majority were in favor of the proposed changes, we are acting on behalf of those members of the majority now. For those who didn't return their ballots, there's no way to determine whether their non-response was because they assumed their vote would be counted as a no, not considered at all, or they didn't understand the reason for or implications of the vote. So we're trying again. I hope this helped you understand why this covenant change is such a big deal. It has the potential to give people in this community the ability to request and vote on changes in our covenants that may be deemed outdated, and also to add new rules where it makes sense to do so. This has the power and the potential to empower you, not take power away. I hope you consider this when you cast your vote. Whether you agree or you disagree, I encourage you to cast your vote and return your ballot. Both the bylaws and the covenants are available at your request from the office or the HLPOA website. I continue to encourage you to ask questions or discuss anything around this initiative with any board member. We want to help. We want you to vote, and in so doing, we want you to understand what you are voting for. This was the fourth in a series of 8 videos created to help explain the Covenant campaign.